Hello, welcome to another edition of Long Beach Treasures. I'm your host, Harvey Keller. Today we're going to take a tour of the historic Bembridge home. This 18-room, 1906 Queen Anne Victorian represents one of the finest examples of Victorian architecture left in the city of Long Beach. So if you're ready, follow me and let's go. Hello and welcome to the Bembridge house. Come on in. This home is a 1906 Queen Anne Victorian. Started construction in 1904 and finished in 1906. It was built by the Green family. He was a banker out of Seattle, and he died in 1912. Actually, he died of a stroke because there was a property boundary dispute, and he got all excited and worked up, and it caused a stroke. And so between 1912 and 1918, there were 7 owners of this home. Then in 1918, the Rankin family bought it, and they owned it up until the time of Dorothy Bembridge's death. She was the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Rankin. You're in the foyer here. You'll notice that this is mahogany wood. Their grandfather's clock is original to the house. It came from Cambridge, Nebraska when the family moved here in 1918. You'll notice the mirror in the alcove there, that is original. That's a beveled mirror. It's mahogany, and the 2 ionic columns supporting it. You'll notice the beautiful light on top of the newel post here on the staircase. The chandelier here in the room also is original to the house. And you'll notice the beautiful coffered ceiling here in this room. And when we get upstairs, I'll point it out now because it's quite interesting. This part of the ceiling that's here and has no support, that's the bathtub in the upstairs bathroom. It's been cantilevered out with no visible support underneath. So that's quite an unusual feature. This is an 18-room mansion. It had 4 bathrooms, which was quite spectacular in 1906. It's a beautiful, beautiful old home. This certainly is one of Long Beach treasures. As we leave the foyer here, we're going into the formal parlor. This, of course, is the piano that Dorothy Bembridge played. This also came with them when they came from Nebraska in 1918. This room is quite large by today's standards. You'll notice the height of the ceilings, and you'll notice also the beautiful pocket doors that we have here that separates the rooms. And they're quite large. And the wood in this home is absolutely spectacular. The condition is unbelievable. They must have taken excellent care of it because it's just in really prime condition. And if you notice the walls here, and this is almost like they're doing now with the sponge painting, and this was done after the earthquake in 1933. This home in 1933 suffered only 1 crack in the walls, and the chimney, the bricks from the chimney fell. That's the only problems after the 33 earthquake. Because the house is so well constructed. In fact, the shingles on the house when they built this was dipped in solution. Each shingle was hand dipped 9 times into a fire retardant solution so that it would prevent fires if one did occur. And one did several years later in spark from the fireplace set the roof on fire, and the fire department told her that told Dorothy she had 10 minutes to get out because they could not save the house. She said, God will take care of it. And sure enough, there was a shift in the wind, and they were able to put out the fire, and the house was saved. She was a very religious woman. As we go into this room, this is the second parlor, or it's sometimes referred to as a library. This is probably where the men would come in after dinner to have their cigarettes and their brandy while the women were in the parlor while Dorothy would entertain them on the piano. You'll have to notice this beautiful, beautiful fireplace. These are original tiles. These are Italian glazed tiles with the Roman figurines surrounding, again with the beautiful mahogany with the ionic columns here supporting the fireplace. Beautiful, beautiful room. The furniture is all original to the house. Some of it must have been reupholstered over the years. As you can see, it is serviceable furniture. There's nothing luxurious about it. In fact, this chair, I sat in it and I went clear to the floor. So some of it's old and some of it needs to be repaired, but it's just a grand old house. Again, we have the beautiful pocket doors that closes off the dining room. And the dining room is one of my favorite rooms in the house. I think this is absolutely spectacular, and it's going to be even more spectacular the next time you see it. Because as you look at the china hutch there, actually the outside wall is made of glass. It's boarded up right now for security purposes, but when it's removed, you can see out into the backyard, and it's absolutely spectacular with the 2 stained glass windows on each side, both again which are boarded up. This is my favorite room in the house. I think this is an absolutely fantastic room with all of the heavy mahogany furniture, the coffered ceilings, and if you note the chandelier above the table here, the globes that go up were for gas. The ones that slant down are for electricity. So this is a combination of gas and electricity. If you lost one source of power, you had an alternate source to take its place. So it's really quite a remarkable chandelier. The table and chairs here, I've just found out, date from 1906. So this is a very old piece of furniture. If you notice the chairs here, there are openings here. I assume that over the years, by picking them up and moving them, they have broken the cane and made handles. This is a breakfast nook here. Again, you can notice the beautiful doors here. These happen to be French type doors, folding French doors to close off the little breakfast room here. This room and the kitchen were added at a later date. The porch used to wrap clear around, but as Dorothy Bembridge and her family did not get along with the neighbors to the south, so the kitchen was on that side of the house, and so they built a new kitchen on this side of the house so as to avoid them. The kitchen, as you will see, is very, very small by standards for a home this size, but Dorothy Bembridge was not a cook, she was a musician, so she said she didn't really need a big kitchen. You can see the kitchen is quite small. The handles you open by pushing in the little buttons. Everything is very old and very original. This is interesting, the early garbage disposal. You have a little opening here, and you just dump the garbage here, and outside there's an opening with a pail, and you just open the little door and take out the pail, and that was the garbage disposal. Has a built-in ironing board here. All the conveniences of modern-day living. I had to take out the refrigerator because it hadn't been defrosted and there was so much ice in it I couldn't get the door closed. Even the exterior door I couldn't get closed. And she had a lot of extension cords running all through the house, and I was afraid if it melted and it could start a fire or something, so I did take out the refrigerator. Oh, we're going to a break right now, so stay tuned because we'll be right back.
What we're doing is doubling the bandwidth of our system, giving us twice the capacity we have now. It allows us to add new products such as digital, high-speed data, pictures crystal clear, and get CD quality sound. New products down the road could be interactive services as well. Picture-in-picture, where in one corner you could have your internet page up as well as watching TV at the same time.
We're now in the room that was the original kitchen. This is where Dorothy Bembridge spent her last few years. This was her bedroom. You can see the old stovepipe opening up there. And this room leads on into the butler's pantry, which would have been to this side. And in here we have one of the 4 bathrooms in the house. It has one of the old pull chain toilets in there. It's not working right now, but it will be up and working again. And behind this area is the closet that leads down to the basement. It's a very small basement, but if you look at the wood on the cabinets in there, they're just absolutely remarkable. They're in such good condition. It looks like somebody just finished varnishing them. They're in such good condition. That's one of my favorite paint jobs in that room. I think that with the border at the top is quite remarkable. Again, you'll notice in this room we have the combination electric and gas chandelier up here, with this one being the gas and this one being the electrical. As we go upstairs, we're going to go up the back staircase. This probably would have been used by the servants at one time if they had servants, and it's very small, it's very narrow, and it winds around, so come with me. Well, here we are on the landing between the first and second floor. This is where Dorothy had her desk, where she would probably write her notes and letters and pay her bills. A little settee area where she could sit and relax. With the sun coming in from the park and the beautiful lidded glass above, this is a most attractive part of the house. Again, you'll notice all of the beautiful mahogany here. After we get up onto the second floor, you're going to notice the wood changes from mahogany to fir. It's much lighter in color than the lower portion. Here we are in the master suite. You can see even by today's standard that this is an exceptionally large room. You'll notice all of the beautiful windows here, which makes it very light and airy. Again, we have a combination of a light fixture for gas and electricity. The ceilings in this room are very high. This is one of the 4 bathrooms. And this is the bathtub that I had said was cantilevered out when I pointed it out when we were in the foyer in the bottom floor. This window just opens out into the little room next door for ventilation. And if you notice on the toilet, to flush it, you push the plunger in the middle of the tank. When the Greens owned this between 1906 and 1912, there was a famous opera singer by the name of Dame Melba, who was from Australia. And she, I guess, was an internationally known opera star, and she stayed here in this very room as a guest of the Greens on 3 separate occasions. As we walk into the little alcove here, this would have been the dressing room and the clothes closet for the master suite. And here we have a glassed-in porch area. Originally, this would have been open. The glass was put in 1924. Many of these old Victorian homes, when they were first built, had these open-air porches. They were sleeping porches. When it was too warm to sleep inside, they would put their cots out here on the porch, and it would be much more comfortable. Notice the locks on these doors. They're twist locks. They're really quite nice. And again, we have the pocket doors here. And if you look over the door that we entered through, you'll notice that all of these have transoms above the door that open and close for ventilation also. And as we go from the master suite here, we'll go into the next room, which again can be closed off by the use of these sliding pocket doors. This would undoubtedly have been a guest room. You'll notice that any bedroom that does not have a bath attached to it does have a sink. And this was very typical in homes built during this time. Now in this room, the chandelier is only for electricity. It does not have a gas attachment. Again, you can see the proportions and sizes of the room. They're really quite nice. Women would love this house because there are closets in every room and nooks and crannies throughout. This evidently was Mr. Rankin, that's Dorothy's father's office. You'll notice the old wooden desk, roll top of course, and in the typewriter portion it has the original typewriter still in here. Here's a check here for $1 from T.M. Rankin, dated 1933. And when I was downstairs in the butler's pantry, I found this hidden away. This is an old adding machine that even has its own shelf that pops up. I understand that Dorothy sailed on the Queen Mary quite some times. You'll see a lot of Queen Mary memorabilia. Here's a little a tote bag from the RMS Queen Mary. One thing I noticed about Dorothy Bembridge, if there was anything that needs to be repaired, like a crack in the wall, she would cover it with a picture or with a poster or with a calendar. If there was maybe some wood that was rotted on a window frame, she would put masking tape over it. I guess if you didn't see it, it wasn't there. So that was her way of doing repairs here in the house. Very little has ever been touched in this house since well, many, many years ago. It's practically in mint condition and in its original condition. You'll find trunks and suitcases almost in every room. She was a noted traveler. She loved to travel. This is one of the other bathrooms. Again, you can see Dorothy's creativity. She took wallpaper, evidently, and cut out a design and pasted it on the wall to create quite an attractive display. And this is our last bedroom up here on the second floor. Again, it was probably a guest room at one time. If you look out this window right here into the backyard, which you're not going to be able to see really all that much, Dorothy Bembridge was murdered here. She was strangled and her body was found right out there at the foot of the pepper tree. She was killed almost a year ago and the murder has not yet been solved. However, a reward fund has been set up, so if any of you would like to contribute to the Dorothy Bembridge Reward Fund, we will get you the information. Okay, here we are in the attic. As we get up here, you're going to notice that this is a full-size attic. You're going to see a lot of stuff up here because that's the stuff that we have taken out from down below. We haven't had time to go through it yet to find out what's important and what's not, so we have it up here by rooms, and so when we have time we'll go through each piece of paper and all of the memorabilia and find out what is good and what's not. As you look up here, when I said that the bathtub downstairs was cantilevered, I understand that this is how this is a support system. You see this triangle beam going there with the metal rod here, and this is a support for the bathroom. Over here in the corner, we have a little area which was designed as a play area for Dorothy and her brother Neil when on rainy days, and it was also a little platform built so that they could put on little plays up here. This is the cupola that you would see from downstairs. It's quite neat in here. These silent window eyes have looked out over Long Beach for over 3/4 of a century. Can you imagine the difference that they have seen, from dirt roads with carriages to freeways, from fishing trawlers to super tankers? So the home has looked out over the past and the changing scene for many, many years. You can look out one window and see San Pedro, another window and see the mountains, a third window you could see the ocean. What a panoramic view there would be up here. Joining me now are two of Dorothy's good friends, Harriet Ibbotson and Linda Renner. I never had the privilege of meeting Dorothy Bembridge. All I know of her is what I can surmise by being in her home the few times that I have been here. So I would like you two ladies to give us maybe some background information on Miss Bembridge, and maybe we can put a face to the house. Who wants to start?
Well, I'll start.
All right.
The reason I know Dorothy is because my grandparents lived right down the street here on Main. And my grandfather was a head marine architect for Craig Shipyards. And so they got to know the Rankins very well. And so it's been now with me about 3 generations since our family has known the Rankins. But Dorothy's mother, according to Dorothy's nephew, collected a lot of papers and a lot of magazines, and he said that she wouldn't even let people come in the house here because there were so many magazines and papers stacked around. And I think Dorothy took after her just a tad. But
I can vouch for that.
Dorothy was always so interested in music, but one day she showed me the piano, and she said when she was little, the strain got a little too much for her. Her mother wanted her to practice, and she was not at all inclined to do that. And she sunk her teeth into the piano, and the teeth marks are still there.
I never heard that story.
So, and also when some new firemen would come to town, they would drop by the house and show the new firemen the house and have them meet Dorothy, and Dorothy would sit down at the piano and play for them for a while. And I think in later years she didn't offer them tea and cookies and things like that, but in the beginning I think she did. And Linda, you talk about a couple of things that you remember now.
Okay, well, I first met Dorothy when my husband was asked to photograph the house for the Long Beach Review. I had seen the house once when I was coming through 10th Street, and I expected to go right across the freeway, but found that it ended right here at Drake Park. But I went home and told my husband about this wonderful house at the end of 10th Street. And so we drove by, and it wasn't, a year or so after that, that he was asked to come and take photographs around the house and of Dorothy, and she was featured in the Long Beach Review, and that was about 1976 or 77, I think. And he said, I think my wife would like to meet you and see your house. And she said, well, that'll be fine, you just bring her along. And time went by, and occasionally we'd meet Dorothy someplace, and they'd always talk. And finally one day when we met her, she said, well, why don't you come on Tuesday afternoon? So we arrived here on Tuesday afternoon, and she invited us in, and we sat in the living room, and she said, now I've got to go check with Sophie in the kitchen and see if the tea kettle's on. So she came to the kitchen, and pretty soon she came back, and she said, Sophie's taking care of everything. And she had us come and sit here at this table, and pretty soon there were cups and saucers, and she came and served some tea and cookies and everything. And she said, Sophie doesn't like to leave the kitchen, but she does everything out there for me. It wasn't for a couple of years before we learned out that Dorothy was Sophie, and there was no Sophie in the kitchen. But Dorothy never did much other cooking. That was the main thing she did. She did her breakfast and her coffee, and she ate out because she said she was a musician, and musicians don't cook. She didn't really ever cook.
Why did they move the kitchen over to this side? Do you know?
Yes, I do, because Mrs. Rankin didn't like looking out at that other house that was built over on the other side. And she didn't like being that close to her neighbors. So she removed the kitchen from that location and built this kitchen back here.
I guess that's a good reason.
Well, I don't know. Mrs. Rankin never liked this house, Dorothy said. And she was kind of felt obligated to stay here because the house had been brought out in pieces. It was a prefab house, and it had been brought out and put up, and she was expected to live here, and but she never did like this house.
Dorothy's mother did not like this
Right,
house?
right.
But yet they built a duplicate in Cambridge, Nebraska
I
for
know.
$7,000 in 1914.
That's right. But the mother never liked the house. But I don't know whether Mrs. Rankin Sr. cooked or not, but Dorothy always said to me, I told Charlie before we were married, this
Now,
is Charlie
was her
Bembridge,
husband?
Charlie Bembridge, when they were on the ship and he had proposed to her and everything, I can dish up Beethoven and Bach, but if you want anything more substantial, you'll have to do it yourself. And he said, that's all right, I'll do the shopping and the cooking and everything else. And so he did, and I didn't realize how old the stove was in here. I hadn't paid much attention to it until I gave her something, and she said, Harriet, I don't want to have to try to light the oven. And I just hadn't heard of anyone lighting the oven for a number of years. But she just used her little toaster oven all the time if she was going to use anything, and you know, that was it. She loved to have cheese and crackers and snacks and so forth, but she just didn't fix much in the way of food.
She must have loved candy and cookies,
yes.
because I have found empty tins and full tins all over the house in every room from the bathroom to the attic.
Yeah, she had a sweet tooth. She had a sweet tooth.
What did her father do, Mr. Rankin? Because I found a check upstairs. It's dated 1933, and it's for $1, and it says T.M. Rankin, Creamery and Butter.
Well, back in Nebraska, he was the in-between man for the farmer and the merchant that sold the cream and eggs and butter and milk. He bought it from the farmer and sold it to the grocer. And he did that in a little town in Nebraska.
Cambridge, Nebraska.
Right, Cambridge, Nebraska, and that's what he did for years and years. And then when they found that this house was for sale, they had seen the house, and I guess the grandmother wrote him a letter and said this house was for sale. And so they sold their house that they had built that looked like this and came and bought this one. And their furniture sat on the front porch for 2 or 3 weeks before they could move in, and nothing was locked, nothing was stolen. It was just safe.
According to
in
my
those days.
research, her grandmother put a $100 deposit down and notified them in Nebraska, and they said yes, they were interested. So they bought this house for $12,500 in 1918, and the same day they put their home up in Cambridge, Nebraska, a duplicate of this on the market, and it sold the same day for $12,500.
Dorothy always felt she was supposed to live here, I think.
You know, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that Dorothy had two great loves in her life, this home and music.
And Charlie. She said Charlie treated her like a queen. She had been married previously to one of her students from Jordan, and the marriage didn't last, and there were no children by that marriage. But when she married Charlie, she said that for the duration of his life, she just had a most wonderful, wonderful husband and a most wonderful life. And she always just kind of discounted the first husband and, you know, settled in on Charlie, who was quite a bit older than she was. And Charlie
Was a contractor?
well, he did painting for movie stars and things like that, and he knew a lot of Hollywood people and was in a lot of beautiful homes. And but he was just so happy with Dorothy, and she was just so happy with him that it was just kind of a marriage made in heaven.
You mentioned that he proposed on ship. That didn't happen to be the Queen Mary, did it?
No. Mm-mm.
I thank both of you for joining me today and sharing your thoughts and your stories about Dorothy. I hope that this will help put a face to the house and that people will understand what a true treasure she really was. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed your tour of the Bembridge House. The Bembridge House is now owned by Long Beach Heritage. The restoration is going to be costly, and we're seeking financial help from individuals, companies, and corporations. So send your tax-free donations to the address at the bottom of the screen, and join us again next month when we take another walk through history and uncover more Long Beach treasures.